We're going to be talking about project management.
I am Nigel Bhagwatsaran. I'm the senior lecturer in project management at Cipriani College of Labor and Co-operative Studies. I'm the dean for project management at the college. I have been at the college since 2005.
I reached out because I was so excited by the theme project management. How did you get to where you are?
A lot of persistence, dedication, a passion for project management, unwavering parental support, meeting good people over the years, and unwavering support from God Almighty. Persistence, a passion for project management, a results-based frame of doing things. Everything that we do at this particular point in time requires an emphasis on results and targets. This month, November 2024, is International Project Management Month. The Day of International Project Management was on the 7th of November 2024.
What are your comments about project management in our country?
I think project management in the country at this point in time has gotten an increased priority and increased emphasis as we enter that results-based way of doing things. In recent times, when we look at public sector projects, private sector projects, we are seeing some gaps, some pitfalls. You can see many projects before us. At this particular point in time, we are seeing the restructuring of WASA in terms of the public sector. We are seeing the construction of the Tobago Airport, the port. So all these are mega projects that we can see. Too often when we think of project management, we think of it being solely on the construction sector. But simply erecting your Christmas tree around this time, or refurbishing your home, or repairing a broken traffic light. These projects are everywhere. So every day, whether consciously or subconsciously, we live and breathe project management. It's not only at the public level, but it starts with what we do in our home environment. How does that influence the community environment, and then towards the national agenda?
Nigel, I am so happy with what you've just said because I've worked in event planning for many years. To me, for you to have a successful event, you had to start with a concept and something on paper.
Project management starts with an idea for creativity, for innovation, pools information and from different knowledge areas. Once you have that idea, you start the planning phase. If you spend 80% of the time on proper planning, the project will be executed easier. 20% of the effort is required on execution if you take 80% of the effort and time on planning. 15 years ago, the average price of oil was 140 USD, right? But now the average price of oil is about 67 USD. So now we have to be creative and really maximize our resources and achieve more with less. This is where project management comes in the national space. How can we be creative? Pull people together, pull capacity together, bring ideas together, engage in the conflict and engage in a disruptive innovation to really achieve the outcome. And this outcome may be a tangible good or it might be intangible. What about the NGO projects, the projects towards social capital and human development? What about those types of projects?
There's so many projects that I would like to see transparency being implemented so that citizens can see what are the key performance indicators. I am not seeing that anywhere. Are you?
There are particular channels that we can access such information, but it's very useful because we are impacted by these particular outcomes on a daily basis.
But I'm not aware of where I can go to see, for example,
Yes.
I don't know where I can go to see what is the project management approach to Carnival 2025.
It was recently launched. I think last week I saw it on the media by the chairman of the NCC, right? So it was recently launched. But I do agree with you. Many of these mega events, require a project management approach. Sometimes in organizations, you have your project managers, your project officers, and they will obviously craft this approach. Sometimes it needs to be made more public, probably on the company's website or the event organizer's website, and be made more generally disseminated. There's a viewing so we can understand that if there's a gap or limitation, or if the project led to, let's say, a course overrun or a schedule overrun, so to speak, we can understand what were the underlying reasons. If the project didn't achieve its mandate, what were the underlying reasons? So I do hear you. I think we live in a space of stakeholder leveraging private sector and the public sector for resources based on the goodwill of people and so to lend resources in this particular time. And this is where that creative mindset really comes in. How can we achieve more with less? How can we bring capacity? How can we pool ideas together to really get it done? But we have seen in the past, 5 to 10 years, that project management is a key tool in the toolbox of leaders and managers. So whereas we would have said in the past, a leader needs to have conflict resolution skills, managerial skills, visionary skills, charismatic skills. Now we are seeing that project management is an essential toolkit. So you find that where leaders go and managers go, they accompany their project managers often accompany these guys in these particular spaces. We can see that project managers are tasked with delivering on a particular outcome, whether it is a social good or an economic good, as the case may be. We do have a lot of capacity. It is only on Friday night, the college hosted a seminar with Dr. Ishmael Khan, who's a lead international project management practitioner, also the chairman of NGC. And we came to the realization that we have a lot of capacity in project management in the region, and is slowly becoming a resource that we can export. So whilst we have failed projects, we do have some very successful projects. I know I'm an optimist.
If I lived in another country,
Yes.
what would I look at in Trinidad to say, okay, that is evidence that they do excellent work at project management?
30 years ago, we did not have climate change. We did not have AI disruption. We didn't have blockchain technology or cryptocurrency. We did not have these socio-economic challenges that we are faced with at this point in time. Now geopolitical wars are coming our neck of the woods. So the operating space would have changed dramatically, right, over the past 30 years. Yeah. So you would find that countries, public sector entities, private sector corporations heading into that project management direction. So how would you know they are practicing high quality project management? Back to the question, they will emphasize a strong project plan. But even before a strong project plan, they will go about defining the value. What is the value of the project and how does it contribute towards that agenda? But too often we are constrained by funding, right? Limited constraints. This is what really impacts the delivery of those projects. So we have to define value. That's paramount, right? Then there will be a strong project planning approach, a clear project plan, a project execution framework, which we now use to execute and monitor the project to ensure that the project is delivering as expected. Is it delivering on the value that was intended, that was envisaged at the very beginning of the project? And there will be a strong monitoring framework. And sometimes in the monitoring framework as well, we realize that the targets are not being realized. So how do we take corrective action? But at the same time, the operating environment is changing. There might be resistant stakeholders and so who might come into the fray at that particular point in time. And this can really set back the project. It can impede the project from delivering. And this is where we, the public, now get frustrated because we are seeing funds allocated, right? We are seeing people and resources behind something, but we are not seeing the intended value by the intended date. And what we say is a waste of taxpayers' dollars. But there are a lot of hidden variables at play.
I would challenge you by saying,
Yes.
I'm not aware of what our national goal.
We have our national goals are pretty much enshrined in our National Development Policy Vision 2030. So in every particular sector, whether public service, private service, medicine, education, health, infrastructure, we do have our national agenda towards in these particular areas. So every year now, the government launches a business plan, a results-based framework through their particular ministries now towards meeting some of the projects enshrined in that national agenda. In terms of the dream national goal, empowered society for the 21st century. That's how I look at it. I empower a society that provides social justice for all. Yeah, that should be our common agenda. Whilst we can say that we are guided by the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals, we have to understand our context here in Trinidad and Tobago, right? And we should move towards an empowered society, a society that is accountable for their actions as well too, and that contributes towards the national good. That's important.
Yeah. Nigel, it's really good of you to bring up that UN developmental goals,
Yes.
17 of them. And unfortunately, Trinidad is not doing well on those goals when the UN does its annual report. We have not been doing well. So, if you had a miracle and you could transform one thing, what would you do just to make sure that project management becomes something that we use on an ongoing basis?
I think there's a need for the recognition of the value potential of project management. We should understand that we have an organization. What are the particular projects that are geared towards the strategic priorities of the organization? Now, the environment may cause some of these projects to shift in priority as well as accelerate in priority. There's a need to really link the project to the strategic priority of the business. Yeah. Too often, we want many things done at the same point in time, but there are only so few people, there are only so much resources, there's only so much capacity available to do it. Yeah, and that's the harsh reality. Whilst you might be ambitious and advocate for change, when you hit the ground running and you realize the forces at play, right? Sometimes it might involve legislative agenda, right? You have to deal with the ethics of the situation as well, the resource constraint. Look at the people and the stakeholders before you and what could be realistically done, as well as always benchmark what you are doing towards standards of good practice. Not necessarily internationally, might be standards of good practice right here in Trinidad and Tobago and regionally.
So let's go back a little to the seminar that you all had.
Yeah.
What was the goal of that seminar? Why did you do it?
But the goal of the seminar, well, is really to highlight International Project Management Month and actual day, as well as to shed some light on the importance of project management within TN, as well as highlight some of the pitfalls, gaps where we might not be performing as we should, and brainstorm some of the solutions that we can possibly pursue to improve on those limitations. Yeah.
And having done that, is there a solution that you would want to share with us that you all brainstormed about?
I think firstly, we need to plan. I think definitely we need to go back to the drawing board and plan, engage in the documentation, understand why there's a need for this trigger. What is this project or this outcome trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve? Is it a project that we are pursuing that somebody had a grand idea one Monday morning? Or is this project towards a particular good for the benefit and empowerment of people? Right? So we need to justify the project, establish the triggers, what is the problem to be solved, right? What are the enablers of the project and plan? Do a proper project planning, proper justification. Sometimes we rush into project management and into execution, but we realize we hit the stumbling block. So I think we need to plan and we need to risk manage. There's an adage that says that the best project managers are risk managers. See the risk in everything.
So coming back to Cipriani Labour College and teaching project management, what is that?
At Cipriani College, we are the only institution to offer a bachelor's degree in project management, right? So our programs are pretty much layered. Students can access a certificate, a diploma, straight up to a bachelor's degree in project management. Over the past 16 years of the program, we would have produced over 4,000 project managers who occupy public sector spaces as well as private sector space. At this point in time in our bachelor's degree program, we have 137 students enrolled for this 2024 academic year in our bachelor's degree in project management. And the degree is accredited by ACTT as well too.
Okay. So Nigel, here's my concern. We produced 4,000 of them in 15 years. How is it that I'm not seeing the impact of that in the development of the country? Why is it we're not having a better set of systems, structures, and processes?
I think we are seeing some development if we look at the private sector. The private sector, they have their own ambition, they have their own particular ambitions based on their shareholders, etc. But in the public sector, there's a lot of development taking place, right, in various aspects of the economy. Right? Some of them are intangible, so the general public may not see those particular developments. What we may see is the infrastructure type of developments, but there are developments taking place in the health, in the construction sector, right? The educational sector, right? At this particular point in time. So there is development, but at the same time, the environment is changing. There are problems around us. There's COVID-19, there's climate change, there's AI disruption. And many of these problems have different dimensions. But political dimension, so you want to get address the elephant in the room, right? There's a political dimension, there's an economic dimension, a legislative dimension, but there's also ethics, accountability, right? Dimensions as well too. But there's development taking place, but not at the pace that we, the public, may expect those development to take place. Everything that we do in form of our project. So about 2 months ago, we launched our CCLCS program for students who were not successful in maths and English with the CSEC recent examination results that were released. We couched a particular project called CCLCS in partnership with the MyDNS to really retool over 300 students on maths, English.
What was the thinking behind this project?
Thinking behind this project is really to offer a device to retool these particular students, this at-risk group. The program is going quite well. In the project management pathway alone, there are 67 students. In the occupational safety and health pathway, there are over 120 students who have subscribed to the opportunity. Whilst we might lament and criticize adversity, we have to see the opportunity as a people in adversity. Spot the opportunity and retool and reflect on our feet to get by. And this is what we need to do. And this is where project management comes in, this results-based approach. You will see everything as a project. And sometimes I get a bit annoyed when the documentation is not right. So where's the justification and the plan for this document? Where are the KPIs? Where are the business drivers? Good. I always have this old school belief. What is written could be measured. It may not get done right away, but what is written could be measured. So I look at the explicit documentation, right? Let's look at the audits and what were the lessons learned from the previous project. Let's try not to repeat those mistakes in this particular project. So sometimes you enter a project environment or space and the documentation is not right. Good. The stakeholders have not been identified, important stakeholders. You have not solicited their particular views, right? To drill on the project scope and what the project should achieve. These are some of the issues that could really upset the process. We often like to say in Trinidad and Tobago that we are good at planning, but we are not so good at implementation.
Project management is critical for you to engage in the implementation strategy. I look at our doubles vendors. And I think our doubles vendors have systems, structures, and processes.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can do it for doubles vendors, I can't see why it can't be done for other things. What's your response to that?
When you have a passion towards an idea and you have capacity and training in it, you tend to devise a very scientific, mechanical way of doing it. And we can definitely see that in the fast food industry. What about the corn soup vendors? What about the gyro vendors, the doubles vendors? They tend to develop a scientific way. And this is where project management can help. I think once we have a strategy, either it could be a roti shop vendor, if it could be a small micro enterprise where a pepper sauce producer or an ice cream producer, a small ice cream producer in Trinidad and Tobago. Once you determine your strategy, your way forward, good, you drill on your tactics, you set up your metrics and so to gauge the success of the business. Sometimes the brainstorming and the high-level blue sky ideas can get into the document. We have to be very pragmatic and practical what could be achieved with the resources and the people around us.
If you're engaged in a project, who do you report to so that somebody else ensures that you're accountable?
Definitely, you report to the project sponsor, right? You may have to report to a project governance board. In the public service, you have to a public sector agency, you report to the subcommittees of the board of directors, report to the board of directors, ultimately the chairman. You have to indicate what you have done and why you did it and why you were not able to achieve your particular targets. Eventually, you have to report to Corporation Sole, Ministry of Finance, because they are the funders of these public sector projects.
A number of our state enterprises are losing money. What is that saying about project management and project implementation?
There's something that I will not attempt to defend any. I think a lot of state enterprises would have lost some subventions that would have injected, and they would have deviated somewhat, right, from their objectives and their mission and their vision. But I also think in recent times, there's a drive towards higher accountability and results-based management. What has led to a lot of gaps is some ethical dilemmas as well, some bias-based decisions that would have really put some of these projects in jeopardy. But I think in the recent times, there's a movement towards higher accountability, and this is the headspace. Yep.
Yes. Yes. This is the fourth time you've used the word ethical. Can you tell me what is it that is in your mind when you talk about that ethical responsibilities?
Yeah, ethical responsibility simply means doing what is right. Do not make decisions in a project that can benefit one particular stakeholder or could benefit yourself. And ethics and accountability go hand in hand. You are accountable to the market, to the powers that be, the project sponsors, the immediate service providers for project delivery. Sometimes in the environment, we see that as biased decisions are made, and so for a particular entity, right? Sometimes project managers themselves are guilty. So thankfully, we have the procurement legislation, and so that really enshrines the values of transparency and higher accountability for government funds.
I will challenge you with regard to the procurement legislation, because the
Okay.
procurement legislation has so many exceptions that it is now, to my mind, useless.
I think we are in the teething stages of the procurement legislation. I think there's a need for greater cultural change management towards getting our public sector entities to respond to the legislation. And it's a work in progress.
We tend to stop projects once there's a change in government. How could we prevent that?
If you look at the Singapore model, they have an overall strategy, right? And regardless of the government that comes into place, every government has to deliver on their work program towards the particular strategy. There might be some shelving of previous projects, but a lot of plenty starts of new projects, and that can really disrupt the flow of funds. And we ask, where's the value for money? But at the same time, many projects are left in continuity. But at many a times, saying what projects to venture in and what projects to stop, whilst we may have our business case analysis and so that says that, hey, we should continue, we should stop, we must admit that many of these decisions are subjective. But at the same time, we have to recognize the prevailing environment. Circumstances do change. In
Yes.
2019, December, January 2020, we said, no, God is a Trini and COVID-19 wouldn't reach us. And look what happened in March 2020. So we always have to monitor as a people, right, as project managers, right, the macro environment to determine what is practical and what could be done.
We're not really transforming to work from home. So we're
Yeah.
not using the technology as best as we can. In our port transportation system, we ought to have a project that will transform the way we travel.
I know Ministry of Labor is working on their remote working policy. I think it's in draft mode or still being drafted. We should always benchmark to Denmark and Sweden on what they are doing. It may work for particular sectors, it may not work for other sectors. But it requires a shift in mentality as a people too, that if you're working from home, you have to account for the use of your time. And this is why public and private sector employers are going towards this results-based way of working. So if I give you a laptop that needs to work from home, there must be software in the laptop that tracks what you do on whether you are able to meet your targets for the particular day. But I do think in Trinidad and Tobago, outside of any policy, that employers are slowly entertaining the idea of remote working, and they are seeing the results of that, offering the employees that particular flexibility. So whilst you engage staff, you train and you empower, right? Eventually, you give them these targets and you hold them to account and you do the whole change management.
I reached out to you simply because I felt that this was such a brilliant seminar that you all were doing, because as far as I'm concerned, project management is one of our solutions.
Yes.
And the information about 4,000 is fantastic. Challenges do you see that project managers will have in our country?
Because we can go back to the textbook gaps of say lack of funds, poor leadership, and poor management. But I think a major problem in the national space is emotional intelligence. If we look at our particular problem, school violence, can we call that as a project? That's a project for me. Can we reduce bullying in schools? That's a particular project for me. right? How do we reduce traffic congestion into Port of Spain, right? How do we engage in our road repair? That's a particular project. So we can see these projects around us. How could we have managed the oil spill in Tobago, right? We could have seen that as a particular project.
You talked about emotional intelligence. The person on the maxi would be asking, what do you mean by that?
Emotional intelligence really speaks to how do we control our emotions, our speech, our thoughts when receiving feedback, especially alternative feedback, as well as how do we provide feedback to people. So we must recognize, we must read the room, we must understand the moment, be socially aware of how you are communicating with, understand their perceptions, their stereotype agendas. And so an important part of communication, emotional intelligence is just listening. If you and I work in Dennis and I don't like something, I just said, no problem, let's disagree in the meeting. And so I give you a tap on your shoulder after the meeting and say, Dennis, we good, but we are professionals, right? We have alternative thoughts. The agenda is towards the goal of the institution or the goal of the entity that we are working for. So we have to disquiet and suppress our individual beliefs to advance the interests of the entity. And that is most important.
My observation of our country is that we seem to be moving away from managing our emotions, and we seem to be moving towards a lot of aggression. How can we create a new generation of project managers who can tackle our island's unique challenges?
I think we have to install a culture of project management through training at the grassroots level. I think it should be within the secondary school curriculum, because project management ties with our 21st century skills for collaboration, communication, creativity, and innovation. If we are not creative and innovative as a society, we're going to be left behind. Project management is the eighth wonder of the world. It needs to be factored into what we do and how we do it. It's an essential tool. Definitely training, empowerment, and the realization of what it could achieve, learning from the mistakes of projects that didn't work out well. I think in 2023 graduation at the college, when I had to confer the degree titles onto project management students. As I left the podium and returned to my chair on the stage, I told the graduates, 365 students graduated in 2023 at the college. I told the students project delivered. So in that way, they can see that their studies is a project. You started a degree in year one and you have been best tool with your title, bachelor's degree in project management, project delivered.
What would you like the person on the maxi to take away from this conversation?
I think the value add of project management, seeing things as a results-based manner, right? If you're working, if you are doing a project around the house, if you are organizing a Christmas charity in the month of December in the community, if you are refurbishing the savannah or the basketball court, all these are projects before us. Project management is that tool that brings ideas, people, and disciplines together to get the job done. Project management is a tool that welcomes differences of opinion, adversity, and conflict to get a palatable solution to everyone. It is a key tool. It is simply the drive, the thinking and the mindset that we should all have at this point in time. That will lead to not only personal efficiency and personal effectiveness, but will contribute meaningfully towards community development. Message to our 4,000 graduates: continue doing what you are doing, continue delivering on the projects that you have been trained for, right? Continuing empowering others as you go along, and continue meaningfully towards the national agenda.
What is the project management approach that Cipriani Labour College has?
We have a project management approach towards that spirit of empowering people within a formula of social justice, providing equity of opportunity to all. That's our number one drive and modus operandi.
Thank you ever so much, Nigel Bhagwatsaran. I look forward to the continuation of project management as it stimulates our economy and makes us do better. Thank you very much.
Very welcome, Denise, and the entire team. Thank you for having me.